the Economic Development Commission. It is April 15th, 2025.
Yeah.
Did I
There you go.
nailed it? Great. So Pat, do you wanna?
Yeah, I think let's go over who's in attendance and then we have reference.
We have Donnell Murphy, Gopi, what's your last name?
Nageshwaran.
Am I gonna mess that up? Can you say that one more time? I need to read it.
Gopinath Nageshwaran. Nageshwaran. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna try my best, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Where is it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, Nageshwaran. Okay, that's much easier to read it, sorry. And Tom Schneider here, and then myself and Pat. Okay, so that, we also wanna do a motion to accept the previous meeting minutes, correct?
Yeah, if you wanna do it.
Jump ahead?
Jump
Okay.
ahead, yeah, absolutely.
Just
Yep.
that everyone's been sworn in, so we have a quorum and everything?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's a good.
I did,
Okay.
yeah.
Yep, good to go.
Great, and then, so can I have a motion to accept the previous meeting minutes?
It's gonna be really just 2-0-0, so we'll, Tom can't vote on it, just the.
Yeah, but I can second it though.
You can
right?
second it,
I'll
yeah,
second it.
Okay, so, what did we say again?
All those in favor?
All those in favor? You guys?
Two.
Yeah, just say aye.
So
Aye.
just,
Aye.
well, we
We
just
can't
need
vote
to
on
leave
it.
that
I'm
now.
gonna abstain because I wasn't at the,
We might just hold on.
meetings.
Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was something
just
we were
be-
supposed to do, so,
Well, you
No,
know,
it is.
it is, but
we can't
I
vote on
wasn't
it.
here and both Gopi and Tom weren't members yet, so we
Ah,
didn't be able to vote on it.
okay,
Yeah.
apologies.
Yeah, no worries.
Only, okay. Okay, so do we wanna review the business forum then? We'll jump right in.
Yeah.
Wait, is there discussion on the associate member
Well,
discussion?
So yeah,
What's
so
that
this,
about?
this came up, I was having a conversation with the administrative, office, just cause there's 3 members that were, applied for it. Also heard some kind of rumblings that other people might be interested. I know we changed the charter, I think 2 times now within the past couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
I think initially it was 9 members, 5 associates, and then went to 7 members. We had to change some stuff because there was supposed to be a FinCom member. It's just a general discussion I want to bring to the commission if we wanted to have associates. I wouldn't recommend increasing the number of members because it was a quorum problem, which is why we went to 7.
Right.
Just a point of discussion if there's any interest. I'm not.
Is there currently associate members?
No.
Right now?
No.
No, there isn't. So I'd be in favor of having 2 associates on the board in order to extend the growth of the board. Having people on, at least learning what goes on with the board, and then maybe being able to become a member once an acting or a full member resigns or leaves or whatever. I think it's a good way to funnel people in and keep the board running and keep us all up to speed. So I'm in favor of having 2 associate members.
I would agree with that. I enjoyed sitting in
Yeah.
as a member of the public, which of course still applies, but if you're an associate member, then you have to, you're gonna really try to be there, right? So, yeah, I would agree with that. If I may, I did find, I don't know if this is the place, but somebody can tell me if it's not. I thought the swearing in thing was a little weird because it was 3 for 2, right? And so you spoke, and I spoke, and then the other, I forgot his name, the other, poor guy spoke, and they're like, we'll take you too. I was like, maybe there can be another mechanism. It wasn't like the guy was crying or anything like that. It was just a little bit weird. We were in front of the
when you were
select
going
board.
through the interview process? with the
Yeah,
select,
with the
not
select
just swearing in at the
Yeah,
town clerk's office?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, when
The interview process, yeah.
to be honest, I don't think that's ever really happened.
Yeah,
We've had
that-
many people
Just
talk
a
at the
little-
same time.
Just a
Many
little
years.
uncomfortable, that's all.
Yeah.
It wasn't terrible.
Makes
I have not gone to a swearing in thing, have you?
Yeah, I did,
Clerk's office?
yeah.
No, I have not done that. Was I supposed to do that?
Oh, you mean with the town clerk?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's, yeah.
You should have received a selectman instructing you to do that.
Yeah, all right. So-
Yeah, you gotta do the ethics
Yeah,
module.
all right,
and
so I guess
then
I'm
get
still
that.
not a real member, not a real boy yet. Okay,
Okay.
so,
So that's the quorum
Yeah.
issues in terms of
Mhm.
actually sworn in member. If you want, clerk's office is right next door.
Well, we haven't done anything in terms
Of a
of
vote.
voting now anyway, so it
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I mean, we can just have a discussion on the other things
Yeah.
at this point in time. We don't, the quorum's really necessary for voting, isn't it? So
No,
it's not holding the
quorum is
meeting.
really mostly necessary for voting, but it is also for holding a meeting. Generally speaking though, when you
Okay.
do not have a quorum, you usually close to, go to a next meeting.
If they're still there, I mean, I don't mind.
Yeah, they
Do
are.
you wanna-
actually there.
do you wanna
I
take
mean,
a
I'm not a
time out?
member anyway, I'm just a member at large, I guess.
Right.
So, sure.
Do you wanna take a time out then?
Thank you.
We're resuming, okay,
Alright.
so we're talking about the associate member discussion.
Yeah.
So I would be in agreement with what the others have said. I think having,
Favorable.
yeah, generally favorable. I don't see why not. They're non-voting members and they just would be, they can be part of the discussions, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, just cause people show up and then heard a few more things about people interested on.
Yeah, I don't think we're in the business of turning people away. Like, if they're
Yeah.
interested in contributing to the objectives, then I think it's a great,
And the meetings are public anyway, so like when Tom showed up too, I mean, anyone interested.
Yeah.
But we have to change our charter.
Yeah.
So if I could, can I make a motion that we request the selectmen to change the charter for the Economic Development Commission to include 2 associate members?
yes.
Second.
I second that.
All in favor, I guess would be?
Aye.
Aye. So 4-0-0.
Charter.
You're all right with that, Pat, right? You're in agreement?
Yeah.
And that goes through the select board, is that what you said?
Yep.
What is the process? Is it just that they vote on it?
Yeah,
On-
it's just
we
a,
have-
kind of almost like a board business thing, they were just thinking about to just amend it, and then does it change with the clerk, and, yeah, I was interested.
Okay.
I think right before we were talking about the business forum.
Yeah.
as well,
Yep.
right? Yeah, overall, you know, talking to the country club, they're happy running it too, so I mean, that's another kind of aspect, they're pretty good to work with. Space is accommodating, so 3rd year in a row that I've been a part of it, and it's been easier to run each year,
Yeah.
I would say.
What was the head count this year?
I mean, in terms of signups, we had about 70.
Yeah.
Initially, I had 65, and then we had a few more people that the chamber was able to find. We had situations where people showed up and we didn't have name tags for them because they didn't sign in, so
Yeah,
I would say.
I was one of those, because I didn't
Yeah.
think I was gonna make it, I was able to.
Yeah, but I would say probably 70, 75,
Yeah?
yeah,
Good.
which is pretty good, and that's.
It's kind of in line with previous years.
Yeah, yeah, I would say so.
Are there anything like as an outcome that we track out of this meeting, like number of people interested to have like further business discussion or like?
So I think we talked about that, and we never really kind of formulated like in the past, we tried to have like outgoing surveys, and I got nothing for responses, so we tried to talk about a way before, we had a steering committee for it, to kind of see what, we want to have a breakout discussion, if we want to have kind of like a moderated discussion, it just kind of never really came together, and I think that's something that probably needs to be figured out for the next time.
Was there an email list generated from that?
But yeah, I mean, when everyone signed up, I was able to, I got the
Would it
emails.
hurt to send out an email asking for anyone that would like to comment on it, just to see if we get any responses back?
Yeah, I mean, we can, and we've done that the past 2 years, is what I'm saying, we haven't got anybody.
We've done that, we've
Yeah.
done emails out.
Yeah.
Not necessarily doing a survey, but just asking for comments.
That's true, I haven't done that, I've just sent out like a brief survey, but I haven't sent an email for just a
Yeah.
comment.
Right.
Yeah, we do
I
that.
think it might be appropriate to send out a thank you,
Yep.
and then to ask if there's any comments or any
Right.
ideas. Not necessarily putting through a survey, but
Yeah.
just comment.
Yeah,
And
send it a
thank
bit.
you, keep it going. So I'll make a motion that we send thank yous and question and ask for comments on the attendees for the Walpole Business Forum.
Yeah.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Yeah, maybe just to add on to that, again, I don't know whether we can add
Yeah.
to that, so it's more like adding on
Yeah,
at least couple of things or questions, more to say that like what made them first come to the forum, right? Like what was the primary objective or the motive for them to come? Did they achieve it, right? Like more of that, asking question, therefore we know like they at least met the purpose or not met the purpose, and we understand.
Yeah, no, that's a good, I mean, usually in the past, and I think we could also just kind of, I would put that in the email, but, past survey questions, I was like, has the content been informative? Is it
Right.
something that you want to see discussed next time? Is there different, you know, category speakers or anything like that that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I was thinking along the same lines, 'cause some of it was just, not just, but I mean, was informative, right?
Yeah.
It was like the, Register of Deeds is here for you and you can do, you know, this and that, so.
Yeah.
It may be that there could be people that came because they really wanted to learn about the Registry of Deeds and they may not, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
Couple of them I spoke, they were also here for like networking and stuff,
I
right?
think
So
a
which
lot.
is another thing which we want to like encourage and achieve as well.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm going, where we can ask people like, did it meet their needs? Or do we need to have more of it?
Yeah.
But it's sometimes also what we try to do some of our events is like put like a very small card like before they exit,
Yeah.
ask them to fill it up, like just the questions or something and leave it back.
At each place setting, I was
Right.
kind of thinking that too, cause you
So-
get the immediate
Yeah, exactly.
feedback, people,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's for like again for future events we could
That's cool.
try to achieve that, right?
Yeah.
And then-
Or you can put a QR code with that. too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Right, right to the site.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Correct.
The easier the better.
I think I did that before too, so, yeah, but, understand.
Yeah, I think also this year, kind of at, towards the end of the planning stage, it was, decided that we would open up the business forum to potential businesses in Walpole versus like we had been
Existing
going,
business, right.
yeah, we've
Yeah.
been going towards only or marketing towards existing businesses.
Right.
My personal opinion on that matter is that like it is beneficial to open it up because again, our goal and our charter is to kind of grow the economic tax base. There
Right.
is open retail and restaurants here in Walpole that we'd love to see filled, so
Right.
if we can open it up, I mean, it's hard to open it up without kind of going too far, but partnering with some local brokers ahead of
Yeah.
time maybe that are shopping for commercial clients or however we wanna do that, but you know, the goal is to bring new business to Walpole as well as, you know, continue to grow the existing, so.
Open it up to perspective.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think, cause again, if you just like, if you know, put it on everything Walpole on Facebook, you're kinda opening it, it's a free event, you're kind of opening it to anybody showing up and
Mhm.
so there's probably a way to do it where you can target audiences either through like local brokers that are working in the commercial space or,
We did, I think it was Tom Waldman.
yeah,
Atlantic, and we reached out to him.
you did reach out to him,
Yeah.
yeah, and
I'm
I'm
sure
sure,
he was there, signed up for it, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
and I'm sure there's other ways, like even, you know, the reps that serve Walpole
Yeah.
might have like a good pulse on like the businesses that are looking for new space and.
Right, we could also again use some of these platforms now, like even Bride and Loom, where
Mhm.
we create an event and then we start sharing the link. People like key in their RSVP, but it's subject to approval, right? Then we can quickly check who are all the people applying and for what reason. We can set up those questions.
Oh, yeah.
And then whoever applies for whatever reason, then screen them and then approve, that lets them in, right?
Yeah.
So we could still open up a wider crowd and see who wants to come. And then we select the crowd and then probably conduct a different meeting if needed for a different crowd, you know what I mean? So at least we know the interest that exists
Mhm.
beyond just being a free event.
Right.
But for what
Are you
kind
a
of
business
businesses?
owner?
Right.
Yeah, are you planning to open a business or
Right.
considering it and then, yeah, kind of screen it that way so it's not too,
Right,
doesn't get
and
too out of hand.
Yeah.
I like your idea of actually inviting the brokers, not necessarily their clients, but the
Mm.
brokers, because if the brokers sit on it and see that it's pro-business and doing this and that, when they meet with clients, they'll be saying, I just attended a business forum and they're all gung-ho and
Mhm.
they wanna really get businesses going, they tell everybody to go see, and
Yeah,
it would help him do sales pitch for the town of Walpole to potential
Yeah.
clients.
that's a
Yeah.
good way of like, yeah, flipping it on its head. The other, yeah, again, I've thought a little bit about this just because, again, it ties so closely to our charter and I know it's a chamber event, but, or technically a chamber event, but I think the other piece of it is like, how do we get, if we're gonna have something targeted to the brokers and say like, here's Walpole, like this is, you know, it would also be really helpful if we had like a succinct place or location where we could see all the vacant commercial space in Walpole.
Right.
Like one database, and I don't know if that exists. I think we might have talked about it, I don't,
Yeah, I mean, that's really,
yeah,
you know.
'cause, yeah, so you just look, yeah,
I think the brokers have that.
they must, right?
I know my broker would have that. My
Right.
broker would have, I mean, it depends on whether it's a warehouse, manufacturing, retail, or office, but in those categories, depending upon how big the agency is, they would have those information through the MLS.
Yeah.
They'd be able to narrow it down to just Walpole and get a list of potential businesses or sites or locations that are being marketed at least.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that the idea is like open it to people that are interested in doing potential business here, and then also have this like
Options out there.
way to show like, hey, these are the locations that are available readily, and you know, the EDC is here if there's like, you know, a bigger company that was looking for some tax incentives or something to that effect, or these smaller businesses that just need a little hand holding through the permit process. You know, trying to
Yeah,
just
also.
market the town as like a great place to do
Right.
business.
Also, I was thinking we should like advertise how easy it is to do business, right? Like as a town, how welcoming we are
Yep.
for new businesses, and what are all the plans we have or programs we have for new businesses, kind of a thing. If we can do like a 5-minute pitch, so then that.
Yeah, I mean, really, honestly, we're a small town. We don't have programs like that, and I think that people will call, and it's really dependent on if I can get a grant for something. If you're, if there's certain communities that based upon population and demographics, they get direct funding from the states, community development, block grant funding, and they're able to run their own grant programs. Smaller communities that are of our size, it's really it's dependent on really us seeking grant funding for certain things, whether we want to provide technical assistance or whether we want to provide like some sort of loan or anything like that, which I
Yeah.
really want to get the town in the business of doing that, perfectly honest.
Mhm.
The town in the business of assisting and providing information of where there's already existing state agencies that deal with that.
Yeah, I think you've already done a lot of the
Yeah.
legwork with, like, you do have those documents saying, like, stating, like, what do you do when you wanna open a new business? And like you've said, they come here and you're available to answer questions. It doesn't necessarily mean it has to include, there's no monetary commitment necessarily needed for any of those things.
Yeah, no, I mean.
To like market the town, it's just saying like,
Yep.
yeah.
So when you say, like, open it up to prospective new business owners, you're thinking about individuals and, to Donald's idea of like a brokerage, broker type firm, it's a place to market to?
Yeah.
I misunderstood it, so I thought it meant like for them to speak or something, I was like, well,
I think
if they're
that, I think the
prospective, then how
broker,
could they?
well, I think the broker
speak?
part is a little bit of both, cause
Yeah.
again, they're in tune with what's available on the
Yeah.
market. They're also the ones that clients are reaching out to, like potential
Yeah.
businesses are reaching out to
Yeah.
and saying like, I need new space. So I think, I think there's a way to like integrate them into the process
Yeah.
and help draw new business.
Would that be, I mean, I think Gary's always brought this up before, we've had this discussion, would it make sense to have a second event that's kind of, one's geared towards the breakfast, which, you know, it's a little more expensive to put that on, but if we had some sort of event that was geared more towards. Sorry.
New.
I'm not sure if breaking it up into two would be beneficial.
No?
I think if you had what does a room hold for potential? Up to 120, did I think it said?
Something like that, it's
In
less than
there.
200, so yeah.
So there's enough room there now, I think, in terms of networking and getting speakers in that just the one event a year. But I don't know,
Yeah.
maybe we should try a second one and see if there's enough interest there for it.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of a tough one, because I don't think it'd be good to do this one with this group of people and then this one with this group of people.
Cause I think it would be
that's-
good to like network the two together
Yeah,
too.
I agree.
Yeah. But I understand like
Yeah.
there's an expense associated with opening it up to too many people and so.
Yeah, you want kind of the old guard and the new people. right?
Yeah,
A little
yeah.
bit, right, the established businesses and
Like it-
attract the new.
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
what information you wanted, if you wanna change the format, right? We always just have speakers for a specific topic, but, you know, if we're trying to bring in potential businesses, do we wanna have it more of a networking or trying to, you know, show areas in the downtown or trying to highlight vacant storefronts and that?
Yeah, I think think a little bit of both. I thought the event was very successful, and I thought the speakers did an excellent job, to be honest, so,
I think chamber holds a lot of networking stuff.
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that if we get into that, we'll be bumping up against them and doing that. I think doing what we're doing, being informative and selling the town is better than trying to sell each other,
Mhm.
Yeah.
which is what the chamber kinda does.
Right,
on its
business direct, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can like all think on it a little bit. I think it would be helpful to have Harry here.
own. I was just gonna say,
Yeah.
Harry would be a good source.
Yeah, just to
Yeah.
bounce ideas
tell you
off
that.
of, but I think we're all in agreement that the event itself seemingly went really well.
Mhm.
But yeah, I don't know what the overall goal of the event is, so it'd be nice to hear from Harry's perspective if he feels like it was successful, which I think he would say so.
And Harry's on the Chamber of Commerce too, I don't know if that was,
Oh, okay.
Harry Mercedes, one of
He's-
our
Oh.
members.
Yeah, president of the Chamber of Commerce.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, great.
So, a little bit, I know we're missing 3 members, but I don't know if you want to kind of provide an update just with, what's going on with, the commercial industrial study. So, I know you were here for when that started a long time, well, it feels like a long time ago, but obviously at that time it could be. Essentially, we were working on a study with, our regional planning agency, so the state's broken up into different, regional planning agency groups that represent certain towns, and sometimes they provide different grant programs throughout the year for technical assistance. So we're working with ours, which is the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, MAPC, on a specific review and study of our industrial and commercial properties, in terms of just how it stacks up comparatively to other towns, geographically, where is it located, does it make sense, is that, have, trends change or anything like that, and then from a zoning standpoint, are we maximizing the use of our properties, does our zoning kind of, make sense for these uses? So, the project was delayed for a while, we had our first meeting with our consultant in the fall, trying to get supplemental funding to expand the study, really kind of an odd scenario that's out of our hands, and I know a bunch of other towns are a little annoyed with it as well, but one of the state agencies was supposed to, also run a separate grant program. We didn't get it, and I'm not sure if that program's going forward anymore, but regardless, the project that we have now, we just got back the draft existing conditions form. So this is, I guess, the document that I had sent out, which is only 93 pages, so obviously
Yeah.
a lot of reading, a lot of review, and I know Donnell being on the master plan steering committee as well, a lot of this is kind of stems from the master plan. So the town was working on an update to its 2004 master plan. The steering committee that was involved with that had approved the draft of it back in 2023. So at the time, the planning board is still under review, but a lot of the recommendations that come from the master plan have, are kind of reflected in a few different a few different projects that I have going on right now, and one of which is a commercial industrial study that was identified as something that town could certainly look into to try to, improve the use of those properties. It also ties into a separate project, which is a rewrite of our zoning bylaws entirely. So I think the last time they tried to do our zoning bylaws over, it was in 2007. A lot has changed since then, and so this project, because it's important to look into zoning, is we want to make sure that however we update and allow for the types of uses we have in town, and such things as just how they're regulated, specific regulations to a specific use, whether it's a landscaping property or a office building or anything like that. We want to try to make sure that we're kind of doing the best we can to make Walpole either stand out or be more marketable compared to surrounding property, towns. So it was a lot of, I mean, I read through this document briefly, I don't know if anyone had any time to go through it, but ideally, what I wanted to bring forward right now is just questions, obviously, of like where this is going, and then maybe give members just an opportunity to review on their own, because that seems to always works a little bit better rather than
Right.
just going through page by page and everything like this.
Yeah.
And then provide the responses to a consultant. The plan now, with the study being kind of revised a little bit, is, update and finalizing the existing conditions. There's gonna be a survey for kind of like a community outreach process. And then MAPC is going to work with the data that's within the background study as well as, within the survey. I think we may try to do stakeholder interviews. I'm not sure if that's something we may have to change because of the funding, but I'll confirm with them. And then they're gonna come with that, I guess, recommendations for what the town should do. And
Right.
ideally, those recommendations I can tie into the zoning rewrite process as we start to make changes to our use table and what we want to allow and dimensional regulations and just kind of use this document as the basis for the changes we want to make towards our zoning.
I don't recall the exact location that this study covered. I know it was like was it just all commercial and industrial zoning?
Primarily, the locations, I mean, it's Central Walpole, East Walpole, South Walpole, and then South Walpole also factors in kind of like the industrial park area.
What about MCI? Is that included?
Yeah, I mean, that would be
Industrial?
I guess, South Walpole, I guess
Yeah.
within, not, I guess more west, but
Yeah,
I did.
Southwest.
southwest, yeah.
Southwest Walpole.
I mean, I'll look at the decision.
I was just curious, I haven't had a chance to look through the document, but.
But
I
it's
will.
actually, that's actually a good point.
Yeah, I'm just curious as we start to think about what that process is gonna look like, if that should be included in the study or excluded.
I think it's actually probably a good idea, because it seems to be a good talking point,
Mm.
but also help the advisory committee if,
Yeah,
if PC does a research for us.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
obviously, a lot to kind of review, there's some pretty good information in here, we don't need to kind of go through it entirely, but, I don't know if you saw anything down there, if you had a chance to look, that kind of stood out as different from what we got out of the master plan, but I printed out just the first 5 pages and mostly just to kind of give a review of what they identified as, specific action items within the past, 5 or so studies that the town has taken part of. So a lot of kind of what drives, the focus of me and my predecessors is conducting a study of a certain geographical location or a certain deficiency within the town, using that information that comes from that study to kind of direct the focus for grants you want to achieve or certain actions you want to take. So, there was a downtown parking and economic development study in 2015. There was a rapid recovery plan, which is a state plan that basically they made available to communities after COVID that focused primarily on the downtown. It's the open space and recreation plan there, the downtown action plan from 2015, and then obviously the traffic master plan. All these kind of provided, there's a lot of connection between them for certain items, and so I think they wanted to, at least in this section, just provide a breakdown of some of those actions, and then divide them in 3 categories, being, whether it's a land use change, we're talking about like those zoning changes, a programmatic change, we're talking about, like technical assistance or whether, and then a direct targeted approach, which honestly it might be helpful to have MAPC and to also provide a breakdown maybe at a future meeting as well, just to kind of go over the findings. I think it's always beneficial to hear their thought process there. But I just wanted to highlight this document in particular just to kind of, I guess, see where the focus would be in terms of 3 categories of actions we can take.
Right, so, again, if I understand, this is somebody, right, so
Yeah.
at the end of this report, when we get it, so we should be able to identify more zone, like reorganize the zoning if necessary, to encourage like industrial or business area, is that correct?
That's,
Housing or industry?
yep, no, that's definitely, housing's a good point to bring up too, because that's obviously something that, in terms of really honestly, new tax revenue within the town, that's a lot of where construction has
Right.
been, at least time I've been here, probably the past 10 or so years, honestly.
Continue.
And will continue, so housing is a big element. Obviously, the town has seen some large-scale developments recently, but obviously, zoning rewriting is the predominant focus, because those are, actionable changes we can make that can hopefully direct what future development is. But also some other changes, we talk about, whether we wanna have some sort of like programs, and a lot of that kinda goes back to what we can do in-house and what we may need to seek additional funding for. And I've mentioned like the idea of, getting a technical assistance grant and trying to find a way to provide, whether it's like website help or whether it's payroll help or something like that to small businesses. That'd be a good example of something that's like a direct, benefit that the town can offer to small businesses, whereas the zoning is more like for future growth.
And the idea also was, right, like the efficiency of zoning, right?
Yeah.
Is it raining now?
Yeah.
Is it pouring?
Starting to not yet.
Okay, I thought I
This is the
heard,
way-
I was
Lots
like,
of
am I
sounds,
hearing?
lots of sounds. We
It
Yeah.
just gotten dark and windy, that's.
Yeah.
Baseball might be canceled.
Baseball might be canceled. Aw, I'm so excited. Okay, the other thing I was just gonna add to that is that I think the idea of like looking at Walpole as a whole and seeing where like maybe we should regroup some of the industrial and regroup some of the commercial, so it makes more sense, and like Pat said, maybe opens the door to other types of development in certain
Right.
areas, because a lot of it's underutilized at this time, or that's my opinion on it.
Right, so again, for me, one of the reason I joined here was also like coming from pharma biotech, there's a constant evolution there, and then I think Governor Maura Haley, she was in one of our events.
Yeah.
She was talking like Massachusetts being the hub, and they would like to promote more biotechs
Yeah.
Mhm.
and health techs in the state, right? So that's also her goal. So my point was, how do we position ourselves to say, because this first paragraph is exactly what I also pitched in my interview. I said, this is an ideal location that I saw, and I saw a lot of potential there. That is like we're right after off of 95, and then well connected to Boston. 30 minutes down, 30 minutes here.
Mhm.
So it's a ideal location. So my point was, how do we again elevate ourselves as a town suitable for biotech, again at the state level, to get that. Again, maybe we might attract some funding and interest from them to develop this zone, because again, I come from Watertown where I've seen a lot of these old buildings were now all converted into like these fancy lab spaces.
Yeah, or some yards.
Right,
Personal
yeah,
yards, I was
yeah,
there
no, it's
today.
right. So, and more I speak, I'm also part of like being a mentor in that ecosystem. I see a lot of still large and large of companies coming up, raising funds and looking for space, because they all want to be as close to as possible, like between Boston and Cambridge, because this is where the talent pool is. They cannot go further out. People are not gonna travel anywhere else, right? So I think we are really ideal in that case to say that just 30 minutes drive, especially if somebody is in this zone, like it's against the traffic if some people are coming down to work here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So.
I think folks and this is like, I shouldn't maybe speak on behalf of others in this sense, but I do think like Pat mentioned, we're definitely a smaller town feel than a water town. And I think like that's a huge part of the appeal here too. So making sure that the zoning, if there is going to be like this biotech hub, which I'm also would love to see that happen, because I also work in that space sometimes. So just making sure it makes sense for folks that actually live here, not just work here. Yeah.
Put it on the Foxborough border near Harry's house.
Yeah.
That-
So,
That'll work. Actually, if I may, sorry, you wanna go first?
no, you want.
Yeah, no, I was a little confused, most of the yellow stuff is like, hey, well, protect the groundwater, Community Preservation Act. That's sort of thing, right, or at least on the on the first page. So to be on a point, you know, I think, I'm a scientist myself, all for bringing biotech
Right.
here, probably long overdue. But there's other things that I think attract people to Walpole, like our open space, right?
Yeah.
I'm a tree hugging liberal, so there, now you all know, right? But I mean, the town forest, Adams Farm,
Yes.
the trails, all that stuff would be good to know if people actually come here because of that.
From a business standpoint, or just a live?
Yeah, maybe just to live, or
Yeah.
maybe from a business standpoint, but I was thinking about just to
Yeah.
live, right? I mean, if
Yeah.
you're a business owner, isn't it good to be local too, and like wanna live here, so. Just a thought, just basically there's, you know, sort of the friendly town to preserve the little bit left, the country feel, and I think we have, you know, we're lucky to have lots of open space, can make it attractive, right? I mean, and that can be attractive for industry too, right? Like the Moderna space, the old Polaroid land, there's trails and things around there too, so they sort of lured people there to make it attractive for rent and talent
Yeah.
pool, and it's just a nice place and it's not as crowded as, Brighton or whatever.
Yeah.
So, I don't.
No, that's a good point, and I think that's, I just, to go back to the master plan, we talked about that, like, in terms of identifying Walpole's identity, and really trying to emphasize kind of, what are those things, and part of it is, town does have, at least, compared to, surrounding communities, a good amount of town-owned, open space, passive recreational space, and so that is something that, there's no intention to give up that anytime soon, but, in terms of maximizing the use of land, I think you mentioned Moderna, like that's a good example of, well, Norwood is obviously set up in a certain way. They've got 3 train stations, they emphasized, commercial, industrial a long time ago, and that's really identified in the fabric of that town, but Walpole, at least since I've been here, it's like trying to identify kind of where nodes of where development is, and how you can maximize development in those locations, and that's why I'm doing, like the industrial park, I've always come back to that one, up at 1A, it's, you drive down it, and it's definitely not utilized to the potential it could be, because it's soaking wet, it's surrounded by wetlands, it's within our aquifer district, and it's all septic. And that's problematic for increasing the use of that property when they have to factor in putting in a septic system, because there's no sewer in that area. I think we had talked about that last time at our meeting about trying to find grant funding to extend the sewer. Those are like the things I think that are kind of more, they're not zoning based, they're definitely like hard costs and those more infrastructure related changes that are gonna take time, but are things that we could do to really try to increase the appeal of property and at least make it much more, the potential for expansion is there, for sure.
I think the outcome of the rezoning efforts will also like dictate what makes sense, like does it at that, I mean, I think no matter what, at some point it makes sense to get a sewer line to South Walpole, but that's just,
Yeah.
I think it, yeah.
Again, not just sticking to biotech alone, right? We could, again, because we say it's a small town and we would like to encourage. I was thinking more like from an innovation hub standpoint, we don't need to be like big players, but we provide like really nice campus, like an innovation hub or innovation campus for early stage guys to like 4 or 5 people come work.
Incubators.
Yeah.
Right, all incubator space and stuff like that, which from here when they spin out, then again they can choose regions around what kind of technology or space they would like to use around the town or go somewhere else, but we could still be those initial stage support that we could provide. Again, that also brings funding for us, right? Like there are a lot of these VCs and private equity firms which are like funding these kind of stuff to encourage these incubation of ideas and startups. So we could just position that way as more of an innovation hub, right close to Boston, and then when they start growing big, they can go somewhere else to be the starting point for maybe
It's, I mean, I've heard of that too, just in terms of, like I think Norwood has some certain locations that I just have to go back to Norwood, just know that they have a lot of locations there within the Vanderbilt Industrial Park, and I think just off of Route 1 in general. that's, never heard that, I mean, I haven't heard that brought up before, but that's really kind of like a good, makes sense, right? And think about available land that we have for construction, and that's probably a type of use that can work with
Right.
smaller, it can work, because, you don't need a, 20,000 square foot warehouse or anything like that.
Yeah.
So, it's a good idea.
Right. And we could also reach out, we have like tons of university around, right, like they have like the satellite campus. Another example, like there's a northeastern innovation campus in Burlington, right, which is way
Oh,
far
yeah,
out.
been there.
So I've been there a few times and I was like, why is northeastern here? But I'm sure they're being incentivized to build a campus there, and then they're there. So people do come, and there are also like buildings built for like these purposes that I just mentioned.
Yeah.
So those kind of things. We could also sign up, like tag with some of these big universities if they need space, and like we could provide and then work with them as well, because they bring funding and people because of that, I think.
Actually, now that you mentioned it, there's a couple places, I don't wanna name names since we're on TV, but brand names or whatever, are we on TV?
Yes.
You are?
There's a couple places in Newton, I think, that have like what exactly what you're talking about, kind of like shared lab space, and people come with their brainy idea, 3 or 4 people, and it's in some buildings that are underutilized anyway. It didn't really change too much the character of the place, an old warehouse or an old church kind of repurposed. And then once it kind of grows up and gets a little too big for that space, yeah, then they just go and buy some tower, rent some tower in, I don't know, Seaport District or something like that. So you could do something like that without kind of changing the character of the town.
Right.
But still
too
bringing
much.
business.
Yeah, it's just,
Yeah.
Yeah,
it wouldn't be-
exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Business
cool
and
idea.
funding, right? So,
Yeah, it's a cool
So let me ask you, just because you're in the field, so something like that, town could change the zoning to make it doable, you have the right amount, you have utilities hooked up, that it's, not a problem.
Yeah.
What, I guess, communication happens between a municipality and a prospective firm? Like, where would the community go first to really kind of target?
So there are a few ecosystems again within Boston,
Yeah.
Cambridge, and I also attended one event in Lowell, right?
Okay.
Lowell town was doing an event just to showcase to businesses and like VCs and the private equity firms that we have built a campus, we are ready for these kind of startups and other companies, right? It was way far out. Like even when I went, I was invited, it was like an hour's drive from Cambridge, and I was like, that's way too far for like anybody to go and work, versus I think we are pretty much even halfway down here compared to that. So those are the events, right? We can run such an event to bring in those, like there are real estate people who repurpose these spaces as lab spaces. We can bring some of them, VCs and private equity firms to show this campus. Also like the universities, like I said, so we can showcase that we are ready and this is so well connected. Again, connected through public transport, like commuter rail, right? Which is again, students don't need to have a car, they can just come, spend some time wherever they can be connected to the main transport. So I would say these are all the players we could go to when we are ready, or we even have a plan ready. We could start attracting people and having these discussions with them to
So
check
you're,
their
you
interest.
would sort of build it and they will come kind of thing? Like here's the campus.
You could
here's the
still
spot,
show
here's
the
spot.
plan, right? Yeah, just go with the plan to say this is what you're planning, what are your interests, what would
Yeah.
you like to see. It's more like seeking advice and
Yeah.
interest. Then we can also kind of make some changes if needed for the campus, right? So,
And that's the thing, but I guess that makes sense, obviously, if you have a developer who's already in town or wants to build that you know what I mean, I think that's, and from the town side, the marketing aspect, when it's there, I think it definitely could sell itself, but I think
Mhm.
trying to find a developer, or trying to incentivize a developer who builds that type of use.
Right.
I think that's definitely the first step for a community, because
Right.
we're not building the space.
But I think like,
Yeah.
to your point about, you have to kind of market your town as available, like wanting that kind of development. Again, we talked about Marlboro a bunch in this,
Yeah.
they have a whole separate like private, public
Mhm.
entity that runs their economic development committee, but they basically, if they have space available, they are marketing to developers and saying like, I will help you get tax incentives, I will help you get funding from the state, I will help you get something if you come to Marlboro. Because if you look at the life cycle study of it, it's the revenue that it generates for the town outweighs, you know, the tax incentive they might receive for doing it. Anyways, it's definitely something I've also thought a lot about, like how do you attract people here, yeah.
And like tips, the tech and increment financing, I think the town has maybe one.
Yeah.
With Siemens, which is the bioscience.
Right,
aid.
right,
So I mean,
correct.
that's a good example of, you know,
Correct.
if it's a I mean, can't speak for the select board, but obviously when that conversation happens, they're definitely looking for not just, you know, good, well-paying jobs, but also like the amount of employees, how many
Right.
people you're gonna incentivize to have local employees, so those factors go into the town's level for sure.
Right.
I think it also goes back to you have to have the infrastructure in place.
Yeah.
Especially for a lab, it's
It's gotta be
electrical.
roads, it's gotta be sewer, you know, and you sit and you look at the prison
Yeah.
and what's gonna happen to that down the road, and then you have Southwood Hospital right across the street from it.
Yeah.
I mean, you'd have to work with the town of Norfolk, but if you had two towns working, people might look at it, or the state might look at it better, because two towns are gonna benefit as opposed to one, but you gotta have the infrastructure in.
Yeah.
To do those lands, you gotta get the roadways in, and you gotta get the sewer in.
I look at that area I think everyone does, I mean, just the potential.
Right.
It has
Especially
a lot of potential down there.
You know, I think we put that back to, obviously, the ball fields are beautiful and really nice, potential reuse of the prison, Southwood Hospital, and then even from a housing perspective, you're in close proximity to what is the, you know, the new apartments off of Summer Street in Walpole, and I think there's a proposed 40B in Norfolk, and that proposed 40B in Norfolk, it is along the same corridor of that, a mixed-use trail that we're working on with Norfolk and Rentham. So it's like all these kind of things are tied into one. It's like if it could ever become anything, it would definitely be a good location to highlight and focus.
But you need $100 million.
I was just gonna
Yes.
ask, does it just come, not just, but come down to some deep-pocketed investors that think it's a good idea? Like I was in the
Developer,
I was in the
that's-
Seaport district yesterday with my wife, and you know, when, you know, I remember the vast wasteland of parking lots and decrepit old buildings, and over a long period of time, 15, 20 years, probably billions of dollars invested. Now there's restaurants, there's museums, there's residential housing, there's, you know, it's unbelievable transformation. So is that what it kind of takes to, I mean, you're in this.
I mean, if you
district fire
look at what's going on down there, is you need some infrastructure.
Mhm.
I mean, you'd have to do over 115 to Route 1, you might even have to add lanes to Route 1. 1A would have to be upgraded, sewer would have to be brought down through Walpole all the way out there. It's easily hundreds of millions of dollars to do.
It
Also
takes a
think of the
developer
proximity.
that's looking at the bigger picture and getting like building a capital stack that makes sense so that they're making money at the end of the day. The MCI land is going to be bid out because it's state land, so there will be an actual RFP that runs through the state for that.
Yeah, so
I mean, if you look like what Cabot and Forbes did down in Mansfield, from Route 140, they're putting in all that roadway structure and everything, it's a lot of money.
Significant.
But it's paid off since then, there's a lot of businesses down there, it's a great campus down there,
Mhm.
you know? But you also, not just necessarily develop it, you gotta work with state and towns.
Yeah, you've gotta be able to.
It's gotta be at least a tri-party in it. It's gotta be the state, it's gotta be the town, and it's gotta be a developer.
willing to take a risk on.
Right, I think it's more again how we showcase it, right? It's more like now town is more willing, like we want to move forward.
Mhm.
Here is the plan, we show them like a concrete plan to say that we'll bring like the infrastructure, sewer and all these things, provided somebody comes and shows interest, right? Like we start there. So we kind of then sign a deal and then we all contribute to build it together, than getting stagnant on pulling all the infrastructure and then going for something, you know what I mean? It's
But I mean, that's a huge investment from the town, like, in order to even, to commit to building something like that, you'd have to like you'd have to get like actual engineered plans and price it out and make sure that the town could absorb that cost into like whatever budget it would go under, and then, yeah, I mean.
That's tens of millions of
it's-
dollars.
Yeah, the infrastructure alone is very, very expensive.
I mean, in terms
But-
of the prison, we get
That-
One of the, so we're also, there's a steering committee to look at the reuse of the prison. I'm not entirely sure with everything that's actually there, it is usable, so that's a whole other question.
It will be usable.
Yeah, it will.
We gotta remediate it, but it will
Yeah.
be usable, but, yeah. We'll see.
That's kind of segue, but I also think of that location with its proximity to Gillette, and obviously whatever the future is there, I think, it was 10 years ago now, they were talking about some sort of bioscience in that area as
Yeah, I
well,
was just
so.
thinking about that.
you
I
know.
can't remember the details.
But-
I can't remember the details about it.
I think it was on the
Or
Gillette
something.
Stadium
Yeah.
side, but there's always been like speculation of what's gonna happen there. Obviously, the train station there
I
is.
always thought it was on the other side, and that's what was promoting Kraft to go after the train station, not necessarily for
Yeah.
the stadium events. It was to bring in that biotech, and one of those things was to bring in the infrastructure, which was the train.
I think it was-
Biotech is also very overbuilt right now. There's a lot of empty buildings, a lot of empty leasing, empty space. Especially like Arsenal Yards has a ton of, Seaport has a ton of empty
Right.
space. So I think they overshot, and so now the market's like recorrecting.
I was gonna
Sorry,
say-
I didn't mean to
No,
interrupt.
no, and I think the conversation with Gillette, and you know, I would bring it up just because the proximity, you can kind of look at it from like a, you know, an aerial standpoint, and like, all right, how do you connect that to that and try to, but yeah, after COVID, I think everything kind of like put a stop or a halt. I mean, I actually have no idea what's going on with them over there, but it's a good kind of thing to think about, I think, in terms of planning, especially with for what Walpole can control, and really it's just trying to plan, right? Especially if we bring up MCI, Cedar Junction, in terms of what information we put together, especially when the state is ready to come talk to us.
Mm-hmm,
So,
yeah.
That's gonna take years, right, before something happens at the.
Oh, yeah.
Site.
Here,
Yeah.
5, 10 years.
it'll probably won't even go out for an RFP for like 3 years, I would say, and then it's gonna take a lot of
it
time.
depends really if what the state wants to do with it,
Sure.
you know? and that's
They
what kind of-
they could choose to keep it.
Um,
It's unlikely, but,
you know.
um,
Yeah, so
anyways.
this is, like I said, this is just, it's a kind of a great study to work on, and I was excited to obviously get this project going, this document, I thought, you know, our consultant, you know, she did a great job kind of at least putting the framework together, and, you know, gonna take time, at least the next month or so, probably before our next meeting, you know, review questions, if anything stands out, you can let me know, I'll put that on the consultant, and if I can answer that directly, I can do that as well. But this will hopefully kind of put us in a good position to tie that with our zoning right as well, and so the timing works out where we can incorporate some of the findings from this into that process. Yeah, that's kind of where we are. There's a draft survey too. This one, again, is same deal, just a lot of it's kind of initial, you know, demographic information, and then, you know, just general, obviously, like, you know, information, but, you know, any comments on that we can make some changes. I think my goal is for the next meeting is probably gonna see if we can have, MAPC join us, even if it's remotely, just to kind of provide an overview. So-
Yeah, this is a draft. Okay.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, okay.
This goes out to the businesses, okay?
Yeah, I think this is where the intention of this is gonna be, probably just gonna actually be a public survey, businesses are gonna get targeted, but then.
Residential and commercial.
Yeah, residential, commercial, so general public, and then we could obviously, you could utilize our business listing and target them as well.
So you want to comment on this draft, is that it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
same deal with the document.
We're stuck on number 1, land resident or property owner?
But-
Didn't know what to check, so. okay.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
it could be a renter, I think that's where it's coming from,
Yeah.
but yeah, we don't have to go over this right now,
Yeah.
just same deal, I'll re-forward the documents after the meeting, and
Okay.
Tim and Aaron just
Yeah.
take a look.
Great.
Um,
What's next? I think we kind of talked about a little bit.
Goals.
Yeah, the goals, and like Pat and I talked a little bit about it, but I think we touched on it here, like, what is our charter? The goal is to get something done, right? Like that, we wanna be part of expanding the economic tax base here. So like, what can we do? We don't have funding or an advisory board, so like, how can we best help the town achieve their overall goals. I think as coming into this, we've had a lot of, like, some turnover with folks leaving and moving, and so we wanted to just kind of like reset expectations, and I'd love for folks to give some feedback and ideas on what we think that could look like. You know,
Well,
it's-
I still think some of the goals for EDC, obviously one, the big one is to bring commercial development into town. And with that, I think the biggest stickler point we have is in zoning, and getting zoning to meet it so it makes it more friendly for somebody to come into town. I also think the next biggest thing is for EDC is the downtown in somewhat East Walpole Central District in there as well, as improving the central business district and kind of updating it so that it can, with the current economics and the current climate out there with big box internet and all that stuff, make a local viable downtown for an old New England town. And part of what I see, in my opinion, on downtown is, I think the big stickler is zoning for downtown development. That I think we're an old New England town with a lot of smaller lots that are actually in the downtown district, and there's really nothing friendly in the zoning laws that would make a small lot want to redevelop their lot. And I think that's what's holding back the town at this point from redeveloping their lots.
Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Huh?
Can you elaborate on that last
Well,
part? I believe you, but what do
If you go down like East Street, I mean, the logical thing for expanding downtown at this point in time would be East Street, down to Gilmore's, which is now gonna become residential. We have 5 or 6 two-family homes that are eyesores that are on small parcels. They can't do anything with them. There's no sense and there's no financial incentive for them to redevelop, because the zoning and the setbacks and the requirements only allow them to rebuild another two-family there. Or maybe a 3-story with a mixed use down below and a 2-family up above. Doesn't make it financially feasible for them to go and do over the redevelopment, especially with today's current economics, with construction costs being the way they are. So with that, it's a restraint from the town downtown growing in that aspect of it. And then, we got some other development over here on East Street where the Eastland Pool is, that has split zoning for it. They got general residence zone going through it and CBD through it. Big hindrance for redevelopment of that property, and in order to get, and then after that, the next logical place for the town to be growing would be down School Street here and, a little bit down towards Common Street, and then obviously further up Route 1A.
Yeah.
But, because I think the train tracks are kind of just a cutoff all along that side of it from actually growing the downtown. In the same way with as you move down towards the plaza down by Country Kitchens and Rockies down in there and everything, I think that's the growth of the town. And so I think zoning has to be redone over and foresight has to be done in order to make the existing parcels there favorable for development again. I mean, I've tried to work with those people on East Street to try to get them to do redevelopment, and I get them, the finances don't make it viable. And I don't see anywhere in the future where it will be viable.
what if you combine the lots? Can you not combine?
That is.
You talking about on the Gilmore side?
No, I'm talking about starting at the corner lot where TD's used to be,
Yeah.
to the 2-family behind that, to the 2-family behind that, to the 2-family behind that.
Yeah.
I mean, we were very fortunate to have the 2 families across the street be part of the Gilmore site. So at least that's getting redeveloped, but you
Yeah.
have those small eyesores. And then you have the same problem right down Main Street where you have the old TD's into Harney's, into the little shop next to Harney's,
Yeah.
into whatever that is. Those are all little small parcels on the land that they really can't redevelop. And then you go over next to the buildings that I have where Jalapenos is. You have the small little real estate office in there. Same situation. I mean, it's,
See, I look at those, I'm sorry. When I look at those spots, and I think I'm maybe misguided, because you're saying it's really zoning is the big one, Tom, I think about parking. I'm like, there's no way anybody would revamp one of these buildings because there's no place to park, but it's not that, it's that they would
Well,
be
that building I was
isolated.
just talking about has the public parking lot right behind it.
Yeah,
But you know, it's a small parcel on a small lot that tearing it down and rebuilding it doesn't make financial
nobody
sense.
has any incentive.
You know, it does make sense if you get a couple lots together, but I don't know where that, how to jump that bridge over, you know?
Because they're all owned by,
They're all owned by little individual, and some of them mom and pop, some of them, you know,
I think that's.
the people are afraid of development, afraid of reconstruction, and they just like the income coming from the property, you know?
Mhm.
So it's kind of, I think CBD, I think it's handcuffing the central business district,
Mhm.
you know? And I do think there are some parcels that the town, whether it goes through EDC or the planning board, that maybe the CBD district should be expanded, and maybe it should include some of the general residents, but then you run into making their buildings and properties non-conforming because the zoning change and stuff like that, and you really got to get people in town to really wanna be able to go forward and do it, you know?
Yeah, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I think, if you got, I'm thinking of it, especially specifically that corner, right, of East Street and Main Street, and you do have what is essentially, the structure is the lot, or the lot is the structure.
Mhm.
So I think we're going through something like that similar with a little bit different situation, but what was the old Bank of America building, right, and,
That was just a single bank.
single
Yeah.
bank, but
Yeah.
the property is, the building is the property, and same deal with, it's like the logistics of doing those things. Yeah, from the zoning standpoint, how easy, how forgiving, I guess, can you make it, and parking is another thing for residential parking, is there a way that the town could, either deed restrict certain public spaces for private development, that might be a way to kind of mitigate having to have parking on site. But just the construction for all of it, right, if it's private property owners and one owner owns one little parcel, which is equivalent to one building, it definitely makes it
I mean,
almost
that's,
unpractical, yeah.
that's one of the big hurdles I had with my redevelopment down where that single-story bank was. It was obviously an underutilized property, and most of these properties I'm speaking of are underutilized
Yeah.
property.
Mhm.
I mean, I was able to do it because I had a nice parcel there, but I was also handcuffed financially because I felt I could only go up 3 stories. And with construction costs the way they are now, financially, it doesn't make sense. It didn't make sense for me to do what I did, still doesn't. But I did it because I had to do something with my
Looks really
property.
cool.
I know, but I still had to do something with it. But it's hard convincing other people, and at least I myself a little bit into development, so I understand it. But, you know, some of these houses on East Street are owned by 2 old sisters.
Mhm.
Yeah.
You know, they're in their 70s and 80s, and they don't want nothing to do with construction or redevelopment or do anything like that. And it's hard for the town.
Yeah.
you
So
know?
is that the kind of zoning change you're talking about, change the number of stories, like what would have
Well,
to change
no,
to make it
the
more kind of
zoning is
attractive?
there, but it's just hard to get everybody on the same page to do it.
Mhm.
I mean, it's, you know, to clean up the downtown, I tried to, well, maybe I tried to get those 5 property owners together.
Mhm.
And you get them together to get together and let each one of them own 20% of the new property that would be nice redevelopment with first floor commercial. Maybe 2, 3, or 4 story, you know, up above for apartments and
Yeah.
up, to make it all 5. But the problem is getting them to get together to do it, because they're all on their own little
Mhm.
individual parcels. And it's a big leap for those people. I get that too.
Did you file, I didn't remember we've talked about this, and I might be getting the terminology mixed up, whether it's district income and financing, or if it's like again, I'm definitely paraphrasing because I can't think of the acronym, but it's, almost like a downtown property owner, group, so to speak, and again, there's an acronym from the state, I gotta figure it out, I don't have it off the top of my head, but you basically, you file for it, and as part of being within that, obviously the town could do what it can do from a zoning standpoint, from an infrastructure standpoint, but then you talk about that kind of that human dynamic, right, in terms of
Mhm.
somebody not wanting to get involved, and if there's some sort of like, almost like, not that you have to buy in, but if you were gonna be part of the downtown, and there's a certain like, you know, as being part of this organization and benefiting from, you know, whether it's,
You can be incentivized.
incentivized, yeah, and,
Yeah.
you know, again, I'll send out the term, because I cannot think of the top of my head, but there's, a process you can go through with the state, you can have actually filed it with the state, you can
Yeah.
help out for certain grant funding for
Mm.
an actual identified like downtown civic group, not like a destination downtown civic group, but more of a like property owner based.
Yeah, there used to be an old downtown business association,
Yeah,
which was a little bit different than chamber. Chamber's more geared to businesses between business as
Yeah.
opposed to, you know, actual property owner and with a business in the property owner and
yeah,
trying to get everybody on the same page and everything. But it's, I don't have a simple solution
Yeah.
or an answer to it, I really don't.
mhm,
I could see it all starting by people getting in a room and talking about it, but it's even hard to get people in the room to talk about it, because everyone's so busy,
yeah.
you know, so it's hard.
Yeah. No, I think that's, I gotta remember the term. I can't think of the term. But in general, like, that's an example, I guess, of in terms of goal setting, right? You talk about trying to highlight the town, whether it's like a website based or
Mhm.
what you can do to try to incentivize the formation of that downtown property owner organization. If that's something that the EDC can be part of to try to like facilitate, you know, what you can do from, you know, recommendation standpoint from the zoning, but also what you can do to try to like see if it's feasible to get the property owners in line. The benefits with it, I think, come from the option for that group to actually get funding through the state for certain things. But, you know, that's just, I guess, just a different example of like a certain project to look into. That's not
Yeah.
just, let's get money for sewer, or let's get money to, you know, change the zoning or anything like that.
Yeah.
But,
Well, I think, okay, so one goal, like you said though, is we got this study done, so let's take it, we're gonna hopefully come up with like a consensus of this group and like hopefully like advise the parties that be, like what our group thinks is best for the zoning,
mhm.
and then they will kind of do with it what they want, but, so that's one, and then the other one, like you just mentioned, is like maybe there's a way to get, like, to just start by posting the MLS listings, vacant tenant space to the Walpole website, like, you don't necessarily wanna go through, have a broker website probably on there unless you offered it to everybody,
Yeah.
but you could just maybe, I don't know if you can just get access, like a channel to the MLS listings that's like not associated with brand or anything, but.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay, so we can keep thinking about goals unless anybody has anything top of mind.
Adding to the goals, right, I have a couple of things, again, being more objective on, like, if our primary goal is to increase the tax base, can we know what's the tax base is like currently, split by businesses, therefore, again, that also can help us pitch to say that, like,
Yeah.
not
I
the
agree.
tax base
Yeah.
part, but we can say, you know, like 20% of our business is this, another 30, so we can give some stats to people to
Yeah.
encourage them to come,
I think that's a
have
great
another
idea.
business, right?
Yeah.
To
So
say,
we
for
have,
example-
we have that, I think, I don't have to go through that when we do the tax shifts, but we can get that information.
Right, now the tax base is more for us to say that, okay, let's increase it by 10%, just giving ourselves some number to work towards that. And then the breakdown by the type of businesses or industries would help us, like where is like a gap, then we can try to have more targeted approach on like persuading some of those businesses to say, hey, if you come here, you have other businesses that you can connect with and benefit
Yeah,
from,
the little
therefore,
clusters.
right,
yeah.
so we can have more targeted approach to encourage certain type of industry or businesses based on that, right, so that's why I wanted to see the split, that
Yeah.
can then
That's
help us target the effort.
It's a great idea.
Seems like a breakdown, like the use code, kinda,
I think that'd be a great starting point. Then we
Right.
can look back in 5 years and say, how did we
Where
do?
we started and where we, right, that's.
Definitely a
yeah.
scientist. Okay, anything else? I think we're all good. I'm not doing the approval of the minutes,
No,
right?
but you can do the is there a motion to adjourn?
There is a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.